All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is NewsRadio WRVA. I'm Rich Herrera. Appreciate you spending time with us on this busy Monday morning as everyone's back to work after New Year's Eve. And what a weekend it was with the action going on in Venezuela, the capture of Nicolás Maduro. He is now in New York. He will go before a federal judge. Reaction has been swift from all corners. We heard from John McGuire earlier today, so I want to invite on Jennifer McClellan, Virginia 4, joining us right now to talk about her thoughts on what we've seen take place this weekend. So let's go out to the WRVA Newsmaker hotline and welcome her to the program. Congresswoman McClellan, Happy New Year. Thank you so much for coming on with me this morning.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
How was your New Year?
Quiet for a while, which I probably needed, but very good. Hope you had a good one too.
Yeah, it's so funny compared to how we would celebrate New Year is in our younger days to how you want to celebrate as an adult. So I was very, very happy to be in bed at like 12:05 on New Year's Eve. So a little bit different than when I would run around in my youth. I wanted to get your thoughts and perspective of what we've seen over the weekend with the administration taking action against Nicolás Maduro. Now he's actually, they're showing this on television, being taken into a federal courthouse in New York. For those that didn't see any of your statements over the weekend on social media, will you share your thoughts with our audience?
Yeah, so, I think first we can all agree that Nicolás Maduro was an illegitimate leader, anti-democratic, that he should face the consequences of his actions. I think we can all agree on that. I have very deep concerns about the when, how, and why the president engaged in a military strike after telling Congress for weeks through Secretary Rubio that regime change was not what the administration was interested in, after running saying that he was going to end forever wars rather than start one, that Congress was not informed at all until after the fact, despite our clear Article 1 responsibility, in a three-branch government. And I'm very concerned about what happens next, where the president says the United States now is in charge of Venezuela. What does that mean? The Venezuela is a sovereign country. They had a presidential election that Maduro ignored. They have a constitution that says what should happen next when there is a vacancy. And as someone who grew up and came of age in the 90s, saw two Iraq wars, a war in Afghanistan, grew up in the waning days of the Vietnam War. Regime change is about what happens next. And what happens next could determine whether there is peace and stability in the region or whether the United States is drawn into another forever war. And I think the next few days are going to be critically important. And I'm alarmed, frankly, that in the midst of this crisis, and I call it a crisis because it is unclear what's going to happen next, that the president is talking about Greenland and Cuba and who knows what else. So I am very concerned about what's going to happen in the next few days, weeks, and potentially years.
And all of those are legitimate concerns, and I'm glad you brought those up. I think it's kind of funny, though, the way you look at this administration, that they could chew gum and walk at the same time, doing a lot of different things, probably more so than we're used to. But I want to go back to your point about regime change. Bill Barr was on television this weekend, and he pointed out the fact that, well, when Maduro is taken by the United States, automatically you're going to have a regime change. So in your opinion, what should be the transition? Because Maduro's not the legitimate leader. We don't recognize them. Marco Rubio a couple of weeks ago pointed out, and I think he telegraphed his punch, that he's not the legitimate leader. The first Trump administration under Mike Pompeo didn't recognize him as the legitimate head of Venezuela. Anthony Blinken under Joe Biden didn't recognize him as a legitimate leader, and certainly Marco Rubio made that very, very clear that he doesn't enjoy international sovereignty because he is not the legitimate head of that country, and he falls under the indictment of the U.S. So what would you have them do to talk about your concern with the regime change when he's brought into custody?
Well, I mean, the Venezuelan Constitution spells out what should happen next, and that is that whenever there is a vacancy, that I believe it's within 30 days, that there should be an election. It shouldn't be up to the United States who the next leader is. It should be up to the people of Venezuela. And, you know, I've got a unique perspective here because I'm very close friends with a man, Leopoldo Martinez, who led the opposition party under Chavez until he had to flee Venezuela with his family to avoid being murdered, and, you know, spend some time talking to him to get his perspective. And I think, you know, undermining the opposition leader is not the way to go. Saying that the United States is going to run Venezuela or propping up, you know, a president who will rule similarly to Maduro but be more compliant with the Trump administration is not the way to go. We should let the Venezuelan people follow their constitution and elect who their next leader is going to be.
Okay, let me follow you down that rabbit hole. What if they elect someone who follows Maduro's footstep and continues to have Venezuela as a narco-terrorist part of the international drug trade?
You know, I think when you have a leader who is a criminal, you partner with your allies, you partner with other countries, you work together, and you include, when you have three branches of government, Congress, in at least the leaders of the relevant committees. You include them in those plans going forward. When the United States has done that, then regime change has gone much more smoothly. When we go it alone as a nation, when we, you know, things can get really messy really fast. And so I think we need to make sure that we have a long-term plan for how we are going to support the Venezuelan people to elect a president of their choice who will follow the law, who will follow international law, who will not be a terrorist or a dictator. But I also have to point out that on the one hand, you have an administration that is going after someone who they believe to be a narco-terrorist, but at the same time, pardoning someone who has been convicted of drug-related crimes. So where's the consistency there? I think I'm just asking that we acknowledge and recognize the sovereignty of Venezuela and its people, and that we not go down a path that we have seen historically lead to much more instability and destruction in that country and the cost of American lives, when ultimately does not end well for either party.
I mean, we can get into the Honduras thing, but I think that'd take us down a different rabbit hole we don't have time for. He's off the board. He's no longer a threat to the U.S., but Maduro is. And with Nicolás Maduro now out of power in Venezuela, I wonder if we can rely on a country that has become a narco-terrorist state with the generals and the cartel of the Sun running that country. I don't know how we ask them to pay attention to their constitution when they haven't paid attention to their constitution since Maduro took power and forced the Nobel Peace Prize winner to leave.
So I guess the question becomes, though, is what's the long-term strategy? What does that mean that the United States is going to, run Venezuela for the foreseeable future? And how long is that? Is that a year? Is that 10 years? Is that 20 years? Is that better for the Venezuelan people? This is complicated, and I recognize that. But based on what I have heard from the administration so far, I have these concerns, and I think that I have a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I look forward to a briefing where we can get these questions answered.
No, I completely agree with you, and I want you to get these answers. Let me ask you this, because we asked this to John McGuire. What role does Congress play? Because I know a lot. I watched all the Sunday shows, and I saw members on both sides talking about the War Powers Act. In your mind, did the president follow the War Powers Act by taking decisive military action in a limited way and then notifying Congress, or was there a misstep there?
I'd say right now, to be honest, I think that in an ideal world, the administration would have, at a minimum, notified and consulted with the chairs and ranking members of the relevant committees, Intelligence, Armed Services, and Foreign Affairs. That didn't happen.
But that's not going against the War Powers Act, is it?
I haven't read it closely enough to know, but there's what's legal and there's what's practical and what's right.
Right. But from a legal standpoint, it's military action, then notify Congress. It's not permission.
When there's an imminent threat, and it's unclear to me whether there was an imminent threat as well. Again, I don't know sitting here right now whether the War Powers Act was violated. That's one of the questions that I have. But you can avoid those questions by, at a minimum, notifying the relevant members of Congress on your actions.
100%. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation. So here's my big question. I asked this to John McGuire, your colleague from our Virginia delegation. How is it that I have so many seemingly sane people looking at the same actions that happened with Nicolás Maduro and the U.S. military and Donald Trump and Marco Rubio and all the rest, and we come up with such divergent opinions watching the same actions take place?
Human nature. I think any time that the military force of the United States is used, there are going to be strong opinions and emotions on both sides. And speaking for myself, I view these things through the lens of history. As someone who came of age during the first Iraq War, who grew up towards the tail end of the Vietnam War, you see in hindsight when mistakes were made that cost lives. And war and military action should be a last resort. And so I think it is human nature that when something like this happens, there tends to be an emotional reaction first. But I think there's also, as a member of Congress, you question whether your role has been overlooked, whether you are allowed to do your job. And I think after a year where in a lot of ways Congress under the current majority has not done its job with oversight over this president, has sat back and let him push the bounds of his authority. This is one more example of where you really wonder, when is Congress going to step up and do its job?
In your opinion, has he broken the law or overstepped his authority under Article 2 of the Constitution?
Over the past year, yes. And courts have said so. Okay,
fair enough. It's very interesting. And again, I think you hit the nail right in the head. It's human nature. I think it's human nature, and we have our reactions. But, once we get more information and we press that button to ask those big questions, and that's why we send you to Washington, D.C. to ask these questions so the American people and the people of your district learn what's really going on. And I fully support, and I hope you get after it and get all those questions answered so we can let the people know what's really going on.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate you creating a space for different opinions without fear of attack. I think that's getting rarer in this country. I think that's part of the problem. I think the nature of social media and sort of the outrage culture and pushing outrage rather than pushing dialogue has damaged our civic discourse, and that's why I enjoy coming on this show, because you're not afraid to have differing opinions without creating an outrage culture, and I really appreciate you doing that.
Now, I told the staff I told your staff, I want you to come on all the time. I like sitting and having conversations with you. And okay, I'm going to steal 30 seconds here. I'm going to get in trouble because I'm going to go over. I'm going to say this to you because you know the rule I told you. I never say anything on the air that I won't say to your face. So can I share with something that I say about you when you're not here with me?
Yes.
You are probably the person that taught me the most about doing this job over the last year.
Oh, wow.
So you and I had a conversation early on when I first jumped in, and we talked about immigration. And you pointed out the letter of the law inside the Immigration and Nationality Act. And I learned that I didn't understand the nuances of enough to have an intelligent conversation, and I think that's why people get frustrated. Once I figured out, and I followed your lead by really studying and breaking down the Immigration and Nationality Act, when you told me coming across the border is not a crime, it's not a criminal offense, and I said, yes, it is. And you go, no, it's not, Rich. And I'm like, wait a minute. I felt myself getting frustrated. Like, you know what? She's right. I don't have my facts. And I think that's where all this civil discourse comes from, is people that don't have all the information. And when you point out what's really going on, they get frustrated. So you taught me, if I'm going to have these debates, I better have all the proper information, understand the nuances, the language of the law, and everything that's going on out there. So I thank you. You're actually one of the greatest teachers of having civil discourse and making sure that you're armed with facts and not emotions.
Well, thank you for that, and I'm happy to come on more frequently. The past year was pretty crazy, so it was hard to find time. But I will make a point to come on more frequently going forward this year. Yeah.
So see, that's what I say when you're not here. I tell people that you made me better by having conversations where we didn't scream at each other and get frustrated.
Well, hopefully everybody can learn from both of us.
Absolutely. Let me be the first to tell you Happy New Year and happy semi-quincentennials. We get ready to kick off. I went up to Washington, D.C. on New Year's Day, and I saw the Washington Monument. It's so inspiring, all lit up. I can't wait for us to get together and talk about how we're going to celebrate America's 250th birthday.
Well, it's an exciting time all around, and Happy New Year to you and to your listeners.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Jennifer McClellan joining us here on News Radio WRVA. Again, this is the Voice of Virginia, celebrating 100 years, a century of talk radio here, and all the great things that have come on this radio station. It's an exciting time to be here in the anchor chair of News Radio WRVA. Let me remind everybody about the Pearson Promise and the Pearson Signature dealerships. Only at Pearson Signature dealerships do you double the engine and transmission warranty on every new vehicle. Here's what happens. I go out, I buy a car. Oh, I hope this car is going to last. I hope. You know what? You don't have that when you get a car from Pearson Signature dealerships because they stand behind every new vehicle. So while you're out there trying to figure out which vehicle I want to buy, who am I going to get it from, go look everywhere else and then come into Pearson and find out about that Pearson Promise, because nobody else will double that engine and transmission warranty on new vehicles. That's why for almost 50 years, people have trusted Pearson Signature dealerships. Find out more. See their entire selection, their entire fleet of new and previously owned vehicles, whether it's a Chrysler Jeep Dodge from Pearson Chrysler Jeep Dodge or Pearson Mazda on West Broad, Genesis of Richmond Pearson Hyundai over the Midlothian Turnpike, or on Hull Street near Woodlake, there's Pearson Honda. They're all right there at buypearson.com, the home of the Pearson Signature dealerships.
Are you fed up with rising auto repair costs and fewer repair options? You're not alone. Big automakers are blocking local repair shops and drivers from making routine fixes, and that's driving up costs for American families. As automakers aim to control basic repair data, tools, and parts, it's becoming more costly, time-consuming, and sometimes impossible for trusted local shops to compete. Too many drivers are forced to go to manufacturer-controlled service centers where they'll pay 36% more on average. When you buy a car, it's yours. You should decide where it gets fixed, not big corporations. Thankfully, the Repair Act, championed by leading conservatives Dr. Neil Dunn and Senator Josh Hawley, would level the playing field. It will ensure equal access to needed repair information and tools, protecting jobs, hundreds of thousands of small businesses, and putting choice back in your hands. Your car, your call. Tell Congress to pass the Repair Act at carrepairchoice.org. Paid for by the Car Coalition.